add a couple of final thoughts. I have concerns with the fact that this proposed amendment purports, on the one hand, to give Congress the power to restrict and set reasonable limits on the raising and spending of money in order to influence elections. And at the same time, it says that nothing in this proposed amendment shall be construed to grant Congress the power to abridge the freedom of press. This almost inevitably, as I see it, raises some line-drawing questions. For example, how would Congress distinguish between the raising and spending of money to influence elections on the one hand and the exercise of the freedom of the press on the other hand? The former would be subject to restriction, the latter would not. So if the owner of a newspaper decided to use her newspaper to promote the candidate of her choice, presumably, if Section 3 of this proposed amendment is to be taken seriously, that would not be subject to restriction by Congress. But what if the same owner of the same newspaper decided to use her equipment to publish a pamphlet promoting that same candidate? Would that also not be protected as a valid exercise of the freedom of the press? It's difficult to say. What if you had somebody who did not own a newspaper publishing company at all, but someone who decided to use her hard-earned money to go out and contract with somebody who owned publishing equipment to promote the candidate of her choice? Should that be entitled to any less protection under the U.S. Constitution? It's difficult to say that it should not. What if, on the other hand, you had 10 million Americans who chose to form an association, and an association created perhaps as a corporation, and each of those 10 million Americans decided to donate, say, $100 apiece? This would create a pretty substantial fund with which they could choose to pool their resources to promote the candidates of their own choosing. What if they went out and chose to contract with the publisher to promote the candidate of their choice? Should that not also be subject to constitutional protection? The problem with this is that when you've got Congress in charge of making those rules, and Congress can change those rules from one day to another, there is a significant risk of political manipulation. There is, I believe, a significant risk of line drawing that might not make sense. There is, I believe, a significant risk of the kind of manipulation that would be designed first and foremost to protect incumbents, or to protect the type of politics that those in control of Congress might prefer from one moment to the next. These are some of the questions that I think remain unanswered, and some of the reasons why I must oppose this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.